And that machine has passed what is called the Turing test. A significant amount of investment on AI was created during the 1960s because even then, wala pa tayong supercomputers and everything was still on mainframe. The theoretical AI computing systems was created through mathematics. Now, fast forward in the year 2008, the birth of cloud computing and perception infinite scale. So dito na ngayon lumalabas yung cloud computing, the idea of having ultimate or having unlimited amount of computing scale finally has made AI a reality or a practical reality. I remember when I was in college when we were experimenting with machine learning. With machine learning, we only had one PC with one very small processor. It took forever to train an algorithm to learn something because I am only using one PC. But because you're now using the clouds, for example, like Azure, and you have access to thousands upon thousands of servers and thousands upon thousands of processors, machine learning becomes much faster than it is now, than what it was in the past. So, why is AI now becoming the sort of the buzzword, or why is everybody talking about AI? To us, mainly, it's because of three reasons. One, in the middle, is the compute power. AI, in its true essence, aims to mimic the performance and the reasoning and the persona of the human brain. You cannot achieve that if you do not have a lot of computing power. So that's why, as you will see later on, we aim to use the cloud and we put in a lot of our capabilities in AI on the cloud because to take advantage of this huge amount of computing power that's available to you. The second is data. Perhaps now, compared to about 5 or 6 years ago, we now have the ability to store any type of data, whether it's structured, unstructured, video, images, audio. You don't even need to convert the data into some form that the machine can understand. As long as it is in digital form, the machine will definitely understand that. And the third reason is algorithms. So over time, over the last 30 or 40 years, when the machine learning algorithms were started to theorize or were formulated, it is only now because of, again, the previous two reasons that we are able to see these algorithms actually come to life. Now, some of the breakthroughs that we have achieved in Microsoft AI stems from the output of our Microsoft research team. So, for example, in 2016, we achieved human parity in terms of object recognition through a machine learning model that we call ResNet. So, this ResNet model, which is currently running on Azure today, basically you present it with any Yun. Okay. Nasaan na? Okay, sorry. Let me continue. So in 2016, ResNet achieved what is called object recognition parity. So ngayon, kahit anong object ang hiharap mo dun sa machine, nare-recognize nila because it has already been pre-trained. And it is right 96% of the time. We've also achieved, for example, speech recognition, human parity, machine translation, human parity. And these are just some examples of how cloud-enabled AI has now achieved the same rate of understanding of the world as a human does. We have also evolved our AI and democratized AI. So we like to use the word democratize because we made our AI services available on the cloud as cloud services on demand. So right now, for example, we have 1 million developers who are using Azure Cognitive Services, and you'll understand later on what Azure Cognitive Services are. We have over 300,000 developers creating digital agents using the bot framework. So much of the popular chatbots that you have probably seen already are actually running on the Azure bot framework, and I'll explain that later on. And our Azure translation services today supports over 60 languages. So if you have an iPhone or an Android, you can actually connect to the Wi-Fi and download Microsoft Translator services. It's pretty nifty. About 2 months ago, I was in China. So ginamit ko yung translation services. So all I needed to do to translate what the menu was, what the sign was telling to me was that I just have to take a picture of the sign and then in real time it translated to me what it converted from Chinese to English. So do that. You can download the translation services for that. So AI is actually you probably have heard little bits and pieces of AI everywhere. It's vision, language, and speech. You heard some of the terms on the right side like custom image classification, speaker recognition, entity linking, NCR handwriting, and so on and so forth. Yes, it is true that all of the words that you see here in the slide in front of you are actually microcosms or individual implementations of AI. But to us, AI is really a combination of two major things: cognition and learning. Cognition means, or cognitive, it means assigning human-like qualities to digital experiences, perceiving the environment, and mimics cognitive functions. Very similar to how we, as human beings, when I see a person, I would know that the gentleman in front of me is actually Brian ko. Ganon ang kailangan ma-achieve ng AI on the cognitive side. But however, cognitive alone is what we would consider as weak AI, because we would need to have the second component, which is the machine learning. Learning from examples of volumes of data. So for example, attaching to my previous example, how do I know if I was the machine? How do I know, and I'm sorry Brian if I'm using you as an example kasi nandiyan ka sa harapan. How would I know as a machine that this is really Brian ko? It means that in the past, I have been trained to recognize who this person is by presenting me different pictures of different angles of Brian when he was younger, when now that he's a little bit older, etc., etc. And then I apply that learning. When I see Brian through my webcam, for example, remember, machine ako, then I recognize that he is Brian. That is somehow very similar, or in fact, exactly similar to how a human person actually learns. Machine learning is a program that writes itself based on examples and classifies, recommends, predicts groups or segments. So if you combine both of them, cognitive and machine learning, that is now what we consider a strong AI. So there is no other example that I can think of. There's one big example that I can think of that combines deep learning and persona. One example of that is Cortana. So, you know who Cortana is, right? Cortana is this little bitty thing in your Windows 10 PC right here. So if you try to, for example, talk to it and say, what's the weather today?
I can't connect at the moment.
Kasi napunta lang sa internet. Okay, let's try. Kasi nag-brown out. Okay. Ano tayo kung hold on, let me connect to my phone.
Presentation.
12-hour AI ngayon, no? Kailangan ng internet. So, let's see. Wala ng kuryente ang siya. Okay, let's try it now. Okay, let's try it again. Where am I? Come on. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. So we're kind of wasting time, please. Okay, I'll come back to that. Essentially, every Windows 10 device today has Cortana in it. When it's connected to the internet, you can start using your voice. And the nice thing about the Cortana capability within Windows 10 is that if you give it access to your calendar, for instance, if you give it access to your email, for example, this morning I was reminded that I actually sent someone an email to say that I'm going to set up a meeting with you next Wednesday. So after that, si Cortana, niremind ako kanina that, hey, you sent an email to this person that you were going to set up a meeting with him on Wednesday. Do you want me to set that meeting up now? So when I said yes, it automatically created a meeting request in my Outlook calendar. So that's an example of that. So cognition means it's computers really understanding the world. Vision, using interfaces such as your internet browser. Using speech, using what I tried to demonstrate a while ago, where you actually speak to the machine and the machine understands what you're saying. Language, understanding language, like for example through the translation service, and also looking at knowledge. So machine learning essentially is cognition, is to sense, comprehend, and act. So when we say sense, computer vision and audio processing are able to actively perceive the world around them by acquiring and processing images through sound and speech. Let me just check again the internet connection. Okay. Give me a few seconds to connect to the internet. Otherwise, my demos are not going to work. Okay, it's working. just turn off my VPN to the cloud because I don't need it. Sorry about that. Okay. So we have services in Azure, for example, under computer vision and audio processing. The key thing here is that the machine learning algorithms that know and understand the world and know their speech, pre-trained na, gawa na, it is already in Azure. What the 1 million developers are currently doing right now are creating applications and connecting to these different AI services through APIs. Okay? Through APIs po ang ginagamit nila. The second is to comprehend. Natural language processing, for example, and inference engines can enable AI systems to analyze and understand the information collected. So an example here would be natural language processing. So for example, for those of you who use Power BI, for instance, we've embedded AI in Power BI so that, for example, so instead of clicking on the report that you want on Power BI, you simply tell Power BI what you need. It's not Power BI that actually translates your voice. It's the machine learning capabilities that we currently have, who have learned how to recognize different languages all over the world and then pulls up the report that you want. So for example, in Power BI, you can say, show me the operations dashboard for the day. Speech analytics is also another example there. And then third is ACT. An AI system can take action through technologies such as expert systems and also recommendation systems. So we have a couple of customers over here. One of them is a media company, wherein if you go to their website, it actually makes real-time recommendations on what you want to watch and what media you would like to consume based on the preferences or based on your previous behavior. Okay? So it's not a person that actually recommends that. It is the machine that actually does the recommendations based on the previous content that you have acquired before. Very similar to a YouTube experience. And another example is virtual agents. Ito po yung chatbot, but it's not an ordinary run-of-the-mill chatbot where it just simply responds to the human input, but also tries to infer what you're trying to ask for. And I'll show you some examples of that later. So this time I'll show you a video of what I mean by sense, comprehension, and acting.
As our world becomes increasingly digitized, so does our ability to connect with it. Imagine if you could search your surroundings the same way you search the web. Using existing cameras and advances in AI, we can now find things and people in the real world in real time and take action to improve safety and well-being. When a dangerous spill occurs in a chemical plant, cameras recognize the incident. Information about the spill is instantly shared with the people who need it the most, enabling them to protect other employees from coming in contact with the hazard and clean it up. This technology can also help keep people safer in hospitals. Patients recovering from heart surgery are limited to how much they should exert themselves. When someone exceeds the prescribed level of activity, a nurse is alerted. What's more, the location of the closest wheelchair is identified, so that the nurse can quickly get the patient seated and safe. This technology is also useful in an environment like a construction site, where people who need specialized tools are spread out, sometimes across multiple floors. Using cameras already in place, this technology can identify a specific tool, as well as the closest authorized person who can deliver it, saving everyone time and keeping the workflow moving. The digital and physical worlds are coming together to help make everyone more safe, secure, and productive. And we're bringing the edge of Microsoft's cloud to any device.
So that video is what my objective was, is to show you an example of how our different cognitive services that is currently running on Azure right now is applied to certain real-life situations. Two of them is workplace safety, and the other is safety in hospitals. So we actually have a couple of hospitals in the APAC region that's piloting this type of technology. So maybe some of you are asking me how it works. Okay? So first of all, it uses existing HD cameras. Okay? No additional hardware requirement from the customer. Ang kailangan na lang is that you have to buy an edge device, let's say a server from any of our hardware partners or talk to MSI, and then we would have to download something called IoT Edge. This is a software from Microsoft where some of our cognitive and some of our IoT capabilities on the cloud we bring to the edge. Or you can use Azure Stack. Or for those of you who don't know what Azure Stack is, we have 5 partners for Azure Stack: HP, Dell, Lenovo, Cisco, and Huawei. Tapos sila dito. Yes, all of them are here. What they're doing is that they basically created an appliance, a 4-node appliance, and almost all of our capabilities in Azure is running in that appliance. So when you buy one of these appliances and stick it to your data center, you sort of have a little Azure presence in your own data center now. So the example that I showed you a while ago, one of the hospitals in Thailand, they're piloting this now. May mga remote hospitals na walang internet connection, so naglagay sila ng Azure Stack doon. Yung mga hospitals na maganda yung internet connection, they hooked up all the cameras into one server. Yung mga hospitals na walang internet connection, they deployed Azure Stack over there. But the same code that recognizes wheelchairs, patients, doctors, etc. Runs across both Azure Stack and on the cloud. So yung isang use case na interesting dito dun sa Thai hospital was that when they were interviewed, what is your issue? Ang hirap daw maghanap ng doktor. It's a big hospital. How many rooms in that hospital? If I am looking for Dr. Hermida, may page. With this cognition technology, nahahanap nila yung doktor kasi may database nila ng pictures ng mga doctors. So if there's an emergency situation and you need a specialist, they simply need to go to the system and the system will look for that doctor based on all the cameras that are in the hospital. Okay, so moving forward, and for the rest of this presentation, we're going to be classifying the different technologies that we have on Azure AI today into 3 parts. Apps and agents, knowledge mining, and machine learning. Let's start with apps and agents first. So, our AI vision is to empower organizations to transform industries and also to transform societies. I'll show you examples of how we do that in industry and how we do that in society as a whole. Now, you will find that AI is going to be prevalent across all industries. No industry is immune to AI. You sitting here, and probably the reason why you are here in this very room compared to being in the other sessions was that you're probably already thinking, how can AI be applicable to my own industry or to my own company? So you can see it in financial services, retail, manufacturing, healthcare, education, and in government. So it can span across business process transformation. You can extend the intelligence of your applications for them to become smarter, and go and create conversational agents. So what is an example of intelligent agent? It is really your application, but extending it and making it smarter in a sense by giving it vision and speech and language capabilities. So one perfect example here is a website. So you may, for example, have a e-commerce website. E-commerce website. Okay, here's a better example. Last week, we announced together with the National Australia Bank that they're going to pilot an ATM that is cardless. So what you're going to do is simply show yourself in front of the ATM, press a button, and the ATM will take your picture, and based on who you are, and based on biometrics, hindi mo na kailangan ng card. Hindi mo kailangan ng card, hindi mo kailangan ng PIN. Okay, so that's an example of vision. Now, if you find this news article in the internet, you will find that this particular smart ATM also caters to people who have low vision, mga bulag. So ang ginagawa nila, pag may person na lumapit, you actually have the option of speaking to the ATM. So gumagamit na sila ng speech recognition and voice print recognitions to log you into the ATM for you to do your transactions. And it can even support multiple languages. So that's an example there. So here's a quick example of what you can do very quickly today, a chatbot. So in this scenario, we have an insurance company. You go into the chatbot and you can say, for example, so the chatbot will respond and say, "Hi, how can I help you today?" Then you respond, where are your different offices? So sasagot siya with the different offices and so on and so forth. Then it also has natural language parsing capability to identify the intent. So for example, in this case, you said you wanted to buy insurance. It also can connect to back-end systems, like in this case, Dynamics 365 CRM. And it makes recommendations. Sabi niya, I can also see that your daughter is on your other policies and she is 16 years of age. So if you're insuring this car, do you want to include her in your coverage? Okay, so paano yun nalaman nyo? Because you connected back to the CRM to know that. But it doesn't just need to be CRM, it can also be ERP or different backend applications as well. Now, how does cognitive services come to play? If you notice that the next set of questions in this chatbot, sabi niya, what kind of car are you insuring? You can actually upload a picture of your car or a video of your car, and the cognitive services kicks in and recognizes what type of car you're trying to insure. Okay, so pwedeng yung pag sinabi mo you're insuring a sedan and then you mistakenly uploaded an SUV, sasabihin niya, that's not a sedan, it's an SUV. Okay? And if what particular model of car are you trying to insure? Pag sabi mo, I'm not really sure, but here's a picture of it. And it's up to the AI to figure out what the model of the car will be. It can also analyze sentiment. So for example, while chatting with this chatbot, you suddenly lost patience and then you said something angrily in the chatbot. It will recognize your emotion. Okay? It will recognize your emotion and say, sasabihin ng chatbot, galit na pala to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you over to a live agent who will then continue this conversation. So you can create something like this quite quickly because we already have the on-demand bot service that is available on Azure today. One of the fastest ways to do this is that if you have if your website has an FAQ, maraming website na ganun, di ba? There is a service in the bot service where you simply have to point the URL of your FAQ page, and then the bot service will start learning the questions and the answers on the FAQ. And remember, AI learns. So the more you chat with the chatbot, it will learn better how to respond to certain questions that may or may not be related to each other. And of course, the cognitive services, vision, speech, language, and search, you will see these are also available as on-demand services on Azure. Because it's a cloud service, there's no capex, there's nothing to be paid. So you might be asking, so how much am I looking at here if I'm going to use any of these services? Well, that's a hard question to answer because these different services have different price points. So in the case of the Vision APIs, for instance, you are going to be charged based on the number of API calls. Based on the number of API calls. As to now how many API calls you will require, it really depends on the applications that you have. Okay, so how the demonstration that I showed you a while ago, what does the architecture look like? So in the middle part, we have the vision, speech, language, and search cognitive services which are available as an API, and the bot service is available as a bot service. The data can be coming from a NoSQL database called Cosmos DB or SQL database, or it can be coming from your existing applications as well. The chatbot that I showed you a while ago can also be deployed as a mobile application. And this mobile application backend, you can use a service called Azure App Service to run that mobile backend. You no longer need to provision virtual machines. We actually have an app service that's dedicated to publish web and mobile applications. So here's a few examples of our customers who are using chatbot services today. And one of the most common benefits that you will see here is that it dramatically reduces the amount of support calls. Right? They're dramatic. So the most common questions being asked are being answered by the chatbot. And you will know that. Okay? Take a look at your call center logs. Take a look at your call center recordings and make a survey. If you have like 100 questions which are commonly being asked by a lot of your customers and your partners, you bring it to the chatbot. And then, pag hindi na kaya sagutin ng chatbot, then that's the time that they will hand it over to a live agent. So the primary benefit here is to reduce the amount of calls. So for example, I was talking to a bank a couple of weeks back. Sabi ko sa kanya, tinanong ko, I don't know if there's anybody from a bank here. I asked him, this person, what is the most common question that you get in your call center? Anybody want to take a guess? Not really. That's like number 4 or 5. Where is your nearest branch or ATM? Yun ang most common na question. Now, imagine if you were this bank and you put it in a chatbot that is actually in your phone, and your phone is GPS and location enabled. The chatbot will determine your real-time location and it will answer, here are all the branches that are nearest to me. Can you just imagine how much call volume will be reduced if you do something like that? Okay, another example is knowledge mining. So we use a technology called Azure Cognitive Search. Now, what is knowledge mining? Now, everybody here in this room, Microsoft with no exception, we are sitting on a ton of information or data. And some of them are actually in paper form. Okay, in paper form. So, there is valuable information lying in latent in all of your content. So, very familiar picture? Marami kayong data? Ayun po, you're keeping it because somehow, sometime in the future, this is going to be useful. Somebody's going to search for something, and it has to be right there in some of these papers. So, how long is it going to take for you to retrieve the information from there? Can you just imagine if you have something like... Sorry. Here's my example. Reduce the video. Can you just imagine if you had a Bing or Google-like interface to search through all of your documents? And this was the intention of a project that we undertook called the JFK files. JFK meaning John F. Kennedy. Okay? You're familiar who John F. Kennedy was, di ba? So if you believe, I don't know, people have different conspiracy theories about JFK. Even at this point, nobody knew who killed JFK. And there was a 30-year or 20-year, 25-year investigation. Remember, there was the Warren Commission, and there were different commissions, and so on and so forth. Now, over the years, this investigation accumulated a lot of documents. 2 years ago, the federal government of the US, because they have a Transparency Act, released these documents to the public. So literally anybody here in this room, we can ask for a copy of the files that were used during the JFK investigation. But what we did is something actually pretty nifty. We created a project called the JFK File Project. And we took all of that information. Okay, so in default, who allegedly killed JFK? Lee Harvey Oswald. So, what you're going to see here are the search results. Okay? Search results of every piece of document in the evidence building of the Warren Commission that shows the word Lee Harvey Oswald, including handwritten documents, including typewritten documents, kasi nga 1960s to, di ba? Everything was handwritten or everything was typewritten. So, we created this project, hopefully, okay, tongue-in-cheek, half-jokingly, somebody can find out who actually killed JFK. Okay? And you can search through all of these documents. Just for fun, I actually searched for Marilyn Monroe. So, but does Marilyn Monroe have anything to do with the murder of JFK? Well, apparently there's a document here, one document, titled Marilyn Monroe, Robert Kennedy. Oh, let's take a look at that. Okay, so tingnan natin to. Okay, you can actually see the sections of the document where the word Marilyn Monroe came out. Okay. So why did we decide to do that? It's number one, it's because we wanted to demonstrate the power of knowledge mining that's powered by the cloud. And I'll show you a video of the two individuals within Microsoft who actually created this to help me explain how they did this.
Hi, I'm Brian Smith.
I'm Cortana.
And we work in the Cloud and AI division here at Microsoft on cognitive search. Cognitive search is an AI-first approach to content understanding. So no matter what shape your content's in, cognitive search gives you the ability to use all of our cognitive services to inspect and unlock all of that content and then search against it.
What we've found is that you can actually take AI in the cloud and have it do all that reading, have it do all that understanding, and then surface to you the most relevant bits of information. You can just compose the AI you want to express. What are the things that I want to extract from my documents? And it can go and extract all that information from your data source directly. It distributes all that compute in the cloud, and then it puts it and organizes that knowledge inside of an index so you can easily search it.
And while we're kind of going through this process, it just so happened that the government released all of their files from this JFK investigation, right? This is like 60 years of like typed and printed and handwritten and photographs and evidence and all these things.
We just ran all the content through, and right away you can see that the CIA, the FBI, and even Cuba was involved in all of this.
You've got a document. We needed to run like OCR on it, and we needed to run handwriting on it to find out where this thing was. So now we've got text. Then we go off and we take this text and we run all of the text through things that find entities, right? So now we've got an entity. Well, you can then link that back and you can say, here's what I understand about your content kind of in isolation. And then for anything that you want, now I can tell you everything that Bing knows about this relative to the whole world. And you can express all of that in basically 3 skills. which is really powerful.
Not only can you see that information, but it organizes it in a way that you can actually navigate the data very quickly. So what we found is we could express this as a graph, and then you can just see how each of these topics that are discussed in these documents are related to each other. And so whether you're trying to figure out who assassinated a president, or if you're just managing thousands of contracts or engineering plans, we found customers in all these industries derive value from the content that they have. You can take AI, compose it together, and unlock all the value, that latent value that you have in the content, and start putting it to good use. And all the cognitive capabilities we showed are built into Azure Search.
So you can get started today. In just a few clicks, you can go through and you can add the cognitive capabilities to your content and get it into Search Index so you can start asking these questions on your data.
And we published the code that we have, so you can just go today, put your content into the cloud, and have the same experience that we just created in just a few minutes.
But no matter what you choose to do, I think you'll be surprised to find how easy it is to take all of Microsoft's AI capabilities and use them together in cognitive search.
So similar to the intelligent agent example a while ago, it uses all existing technology on the cloud. There was nothing customized about it. The only two things that these developers did was, number one, to upload the images of these documents in cloud storage, and number two, create the application logic to tie all of these things together. Okay? So, yun ang ginawa nila. So the architecture looks something like this. So the media is actually stored, and the files are actually stored in an unstructured manner. You don't even need to bother putting it on a database. You just leave it on where it is. And then we have a tool called the Azure Data Factory, which extracts this data and indexes it, and then you place it on Azure Blob. Now, Azure Blob Storage is a multi-purpose storage capability within Azure that can actually store media, audio, video, images, databases, and what have you. And then that's where the cognitive services start kicking in. It starts to understand what you have within the documents, and then it indexes it, and then it tries to put it together. When you do search, the reason why these guys actually publish the demo is that they want the AI behind this to learn more. So I encourage everyone to access the demo, do more searches para matuto yung AI. Over time, perhaps you might really find out who killed JFK. And then you serve it in a web or a mobile app. Okay, so we have a few more examples that actually use this. One interesting example, this is JLL, or used to be called Jones Lang LaSalle. Their primary property listing site is powered by cloud-based search and analytics. You can imagine a real estate company as huge as JLL. They got thousands of properties all over the world, and they're making it available as a quick search within their app or in their website. And the way they index all of that content, kasi their properties are always moving. May nabibenta, they acquire some more, there are people who forget paying the lease, and so therefore the property becomes available again. You can just imagine how much human intervention is required just to read through and publish it in the web. They just let Azure do the work for them. Okay, so I don't know if I have time to do this demonstration, but I'll jump to this demo later on if we have time. Okay, now the second thing that we are actually wanting to do is you can actually transform societies through AI. In Microsoft, we have 3 different types of major projects in Microsoft. AI for Earth, AI for Accessibility, and AI for Humanitarian Action. At this point, magko-commercial muna ako. We are actually, in Microsoft, we are actually soliciting and finding and looking for projects from our customers and from the government that will fall under any of these 3 categories. And our objective is to meet, if you're a commercial organization, tapos may CSR kayo, tapos your CSR is actually advocating, for instance, finding lost children, you will find an example of how our AI can find lost children or can help in the process of finding lost children. We can definitely help you on that. And because this is CSR, you don't have to pay for anything. Anyway, so an example is AI for Earth. There are several projects that help in agriculture, water, biodiversity, and arresting climate change. So the key technology that we use here is Azure Machine Learning, which combines Databricks, machine learning, and our AI infrastructure. So our machine learning in Azure is a combination of several things. One is the pre-trained models that we said a while ago. You can also use popular frameworks. Like if you already have machine learning projects that you're using, things like PyTorch, TensorFlow, Keras, or ONX, you can run that definitely on Azure today. You can use Azure Databricks machine learning, and you can run it on top of our powerful infrastructure. Our AI capabilities actually run not just on CPUs and GPUs, but also on FPGAs or field programmable gate arrays, which makes our AI capabilities run faster than anybody else. But, and the thing is, you also are capable of deploying this flexibly. So you can do it on-premise through Azure Stack or through IoT Edge, for example. You can run everything on the cloud, or you can run it on the edge. So I'll show you an example of what I mean. So we had a project in the US where we wanted to help I forgot now what state this is, pero we wanted to help one of the states to control flooding, or at least give an early warning on when flooding is going to happen. Because apparently this state is very disaster prone. So one of the projects of that major effort is to do what is called land cover mapping. The objective is to create high quality land cover maps with today's high resolution imagery and recognize what part of the landscape are prone to floods. Can you just imagine before, if there was human beings doing that, you're dealing with millions of pages of maps. So I'll show you a demonstration of how we did this. All right. So this is going to be a short demonstration, but the actual longer demonstration is this. Ito yung kwento. We, together with the state government of this particular state, access a lot of high-resolution images of different parts of the state. Now, the challenge was, how do we use machine learning to understand what each part of the land looks like? So if you click on one of the images, it will actually tell you the classification of that particular image. Herbaceous, maraming water, maraming trees, or if it is barren. Or if in this case, if you click this, the machine learning will automatically recognize from this image na karamihan ng most of the landscape of this particular image is actually water. Okay? I know it's not a fancy demo, but if you can imagine, we pre-trained the AI to recognize thousands upon thousands of land images, so much so that if we throw any land image, it will already recognize based on what it learned on the previous images that they had processed before. So how did we make this work? The land area is identified to study. It was surveyed. It was a combination of buying existing maps or using satellite images that are live. And then all of that images was thrown up to Azure on the cloud to be stored. You don't want to do it on-premise kasi ang dami nito. You're just going to spend a lot of money on storage if you're going to do it on-prem. So we threw it up to the cloud. And then we started training the model. The model basically is given several images at I don't know how many. You can just imagine how many images are being processed at the same time. It learns and it understands what the landscape looks like. Now, once the model has been trained, it is further developed and then it is published as insight, as you saw from the demonstration a while ago. So the way we did this is that it's a combination of both Azure Databricks and machine learning, and also, as an option, virtual machines that are specifically dedicated to run machine learning. Okay, another example of transforming societies is using AI for humanitarian action. So examples would be disaster relief, needs of children, refugees and displaced people, and also human rights. I'll show you a video of some of the efforts that we've been doing for AI for humanitarian action.
Human rights situation often deteriorate very quickly, and the faster we can get the information and we can react to the situation, it can be a real game changer.
New technologies are advancing so rapidly, and technology companies can advise us on how best to use those technologies to protect and promote human rights.
Our objective is automatic damage mapping, because after the disaster, the government needs the damage map to carry out the effective rescue. If we can save the time to grasp the ground damage information, we are able to save a lot of life and facilities.
In a new partnership with the World Bank, United Nations, and tech industry partners, we'll be better able to predict when and where famine will occur.
Operation Smiles's vision really sinks in with what I feel is a fundamental human right.
What the volunteers do for the children may seem like a small thing, but they are able to change the lives of the families forever.
We're creating a chatbot-based experience for refugees coming out of the Syria conflict. The purpose is to have displaced youth find a way to discover and access learning materials you can engage directly with course content.
It's just the beginning of the impact that we hope to have with the tools at our disposal.
Alright, another video. So, this is a great example of how we combine all of our cognitive services into a tool that a person who is blind can actually use in real life. The person that you're going to meet in the next video is actually an employee of Microsoft. He's a developer and he's blind, legally blind. He couldn't see. So, ang ginawa niya, he took all of our cognitive services and put it together in a pair of glasses that he's wearing right now. May camera dito sa dulo, and it recognizes the world around him. So I'm going to stop talking and then watch the video from here and see how it works.
I'm Sakib Sheikh. I lost my sight when I was 7, and shortly after that I went to a school for the blind, and that's where I was introduced to talking computers, and that really opened up a whole new world of opportunities. I joined Microsoft 10 years ago as a software engineer. I love making things which improve people's lives. And one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard.
I teamed up with like-minded engineers to make an app which lets you know who and what is around you. It's based on top of the Microsoft Intelligence APIs, which makes it so much easier to make this kind of thing. The app runs on smartphones, but also on the Pivothead smart glasses. When you're talking to a bigger group, sometimes you can talk and there's no response, and you think, is everyone listening really well, or are they half asleep? And you never know.
I see two faces. 40-year-old man with a beard looking surprised. 20-year-old woman looking happy.
The app can describe the general age and gender of the people around me and what their emotions are, which is incredible. One of the things that's most useful about the app is the ability to read out text.
Hello, good afternoon. Using menu.
Thank you. I can use the app on my phone to take a picture of the menu, and it's going to guide me on how to take that correct photo.
Move camera to the bottom right and away from the document.
And then it'll recognize the text. Read me the headings.
I see appetizers, salads, paninis, pizzas, pastas.
Years ago, this was science fiction. I never thought it would be something that you could actually do, but artificial intelligence is improving at an ever faster rate, and I'm really excited to see where we can take this. As engineers, we're always standing on the shoulders of giants, building on top of what went before. And in this case, we've taken years of research from Microsoft Research to pull this off.
I think it's a young girl throwing an orange frisbee in the park.
For me, it's about taking that far-off dream and building it one step at a time. I think this is just the beginning.
Alright, you can actually experience what he built in an app that was created specifically for the iPhone. Unfortunately, wala pa sa Android. Go to the App Store and download something called the Seeing AI app. Once you download it and try to play around with it, hindi lang nakahook sa projector yung ano ko. But for example, if you run the Seeing AI app, which is running right here on my iPhone right now, if you tap on document, you show any document right here, and then magsasalita siya, sasabihin niya, no text recognize kasi yung tinabi ko eh. Hindi maintindihan yung sulat mo. Handwritten kasi. But if you get any typewritten document similar to what the menu said a while ago, you can do that. So I recommend you downloading the Seeing AI app to see it in real time. So because we're pressed for time, I'm going to forward ahead. You already know what the translator actually does. And these are two apps. They're absolutely free. You can download it on your phone and see how our AI capabilities are running in real time. And once you start playing around with these apps, then you can start thinking about possibilities. Remember the cardless ATM that I was telling you about? The CIO of the National Australian Bank actually got that idea when he downloaded the Seeing AI app. Sabi niya, what if I can create an ATM that doesn't really require a card? You just simply show up in front of the ATM, it will recognize your face, you will log in, and then do your transactions. Now, let's talk about infrastructure. Think about Azure as the world's AI supercomputer. Across 50 different regions, close to 200 data centers, thousands upon thousands of computers that are working in concert and working together to run cognitive services, to run chatbot, and to run machine learning as fast or even faster than human. It is the best place for AI because you can use any type of, we have pre-trained AI services. You can use any tool that you currently have today. And you can of course rely on the service, the security, privacy, compliance, and transparency, and the AI ethics standards that we espouse. Now, I mentioned a while ago that our AI is actually powered by three things: CPU, GPUs, and FPGAs, or field programmable gate arrays. Now, to give you a demonstration of the difference between the three, let's go back to our land mapping example a while ago. Remember I told you, yung demo ko kanina is nire-recognize na ng AI yung image kapag in-upload mo na sa kanya. Ito ngayon, this demo is actually showing you the logic, or is executing the logic of understanding images that you continue to feed so that the AI will learn. Okay? So ito yung learning part. If I execute this learning algorithm through the use of only CPUs, it averages about 6.5, 6.6 images per second ang napaprocess niya. If I use GPUs, which is the graphical processing unit inside our servers, it's 10 times faster. It can now process 63, 62 images per second. However, if I use our FPGAs, it increases the capability of cognition much faster compared to that of a CPU. So usually, ang nagtatanong sa akin, so sir, do I have a choice whether I use CPU, GPU, or FPGA? What we're doing right now is in Azure, almost all of our AI services are slowly being moved away from CPUs, and now they're just starting to use more of GPUs and FPGAs. Now you can see here how much faster FPGAs can actually run the machine learning logic and understand more images compared to that if you run it on the CPU or a GPU. Okay, so again, we have different AI services. These are pre-built. There's a bot service and a machine learning service. Our infrastructure is here. You can run AI compute via Spark, data science virtual machines, batch AI, and don't forget about the data. Okay. Great machine learning and great machine learning depends on the quality and the amount of data that you feed. I remember a year back when we were doing a machine learning project together with one of our customers. Our customers started complaining na bakit hindi daw natututo yung machine. Well, that's because you need to feed it more data. You have to give me more data because otherwise, it's not the conclusions are either not going to be complete or not going to be satisfactory. And now the tools, we have actually implemented Visual Studio tools and incorporated AI tools in Visual Studio. For machine learning, we've got the Azure Machine Learning Workbench and the Azure Machine Learning Framework. If you have already created deep learning frameworks using things like TensorFlow or Caffe, that can definitely run on our Azure deep learning frameworks as well. And like I said, you have the flexibility of deploying. All of these AI services are available in the cloud. Some of them are available on the edge. Okay, so you can run it on Azure Stack. You can also run it on you can also run it on run-of-the-mill servers by downloading something called IoT Edge. Okay, so we'll just jump here because I know we are running out of time. Now, we're also trying. Now remember, our AI needs to learn continuously. And one way of us doing this is embedding AI in all of our products. Example, in Dynamics 365 AI, we now have a new product called Assisted Sales and Enhanced Customer Service. Now think of these as AI extensions to your existing Dynamics 365 customer service and sales tools. In fact, for example, within Microsoft, we use our assisted sales. Our telemarketing team, our telesales team, siguro sa mobile tinatawagan ng Microsoft, they are actually being assisted by AI based on what you bought. Based on what you bought, your profile, what country, and several other factors, it will actually make real-time recommendations on what to sell you. Okay, that's one. Sa customer service naman, ganun din. So, it understands the background of this customer, what products you bought, your previous complaints, etc., and make a prediction on how better you can be serviced. And in Office 365, we have something called Workplace Analytics. I don't know if you turn this on. Okay, Workplace Analytics basically is telling me that I am working 80 hours a week and I'm not getting enough sleep. Yun ang sinasabi ng Workplace Analytics. That I am actually emailing 30% of the time when I am in meetings. Yun yung analytics na sinasabi. So I don't have the screenshot here, but what is Workplace Analytics telling you? It's telling you how productive your employees are. Okay, so if you are an Office 365 customer and if you have not turned on Workplace Analytics, I highly suggest you do, so that you can find out how your employees are actually productive. Good question. Where do we start? Okay. AI maturity is critical to success. We have organizations who are foundational in their understanding of their AI. Okay, our AI. Okay, what is AI and how do we apply it? Okay, there are wrong expectations or disappointment. Mababa yung digitization natin. So for example, if we want to implement something like what we did in the JFK files, well, if all your documents are still on paper, then we definitely cannot do anything that we did in JFK files. The second phase is what is called the approaching phase. Hopeful on AI, you're hopeful on AI and its promise, your digitization is underway, and you're now looking to increase or optimize your processes. And then the third phase is aspiration. You've experimented and applied AI. Okay? So the great thing about running AI in the cloud is that you don't, again, since cloud siya, walang capex, you can start small, you can start with a little chatbot. We actually have a tier where you don't have to pay Microsoft anything until you hit something like 500,000 conversations in a day, something like that. Or in a month, 500,000 conversations in a month. So ngayon, kung ang ka-chat ng chatbot mo, sa 10 tao lang, we're not gonna charge you anything. So you can start doing that. You can experiment with that. You can start with cognitive services, like if it is only recognizing a few images, you're not going to be charged until it hits a certain level. Now, what organizations aspire for is to be in this last phase, which is mature. You now have an emerging data science and operational capability. It doesn't mean that you have data scientists on staff. Be careful about that, by the way, CIOs, maraming nagsusulat sa resume nila na sila ay data scientists. Okay? Trying to find out who are the fake data scientists and who are the real ones is the subject of another session. But the truth is, we need to have an organization or set of people who understands the life cycle of AI. Yeah? Managing the data, putting the data, creating the models, training the models, and then creating the important part right here, which is building a foundational data architecture. Okay? Kung kalat-kalat yung data ninyo at iba-ibang format, it's probably going to be hard to implement something like pervasive AI across your organization. Okay? And AI maturity is critical to success. Okay, I have some more slides. I'm going to stop at this point and open the floor to any questions. May questions po ba? Kasi otherwise, I'm going to use the remaining time to do some more demonstrations. Yes, sir.
Problem today is you have the chatbot, right? So the users interact with that. Now our technicians are using a different kind of technology. So when your chatbot is proceeding, the chatbot recommends what you need to talk.
Okay, so for the sake of the others,
So I look at your chatbot, and one of the challenges that I'm seeing is the user experience. At the time when the chatbot is about to transfer the interaction with the actual agent, right? So we are using a chat solution today. ServiceNow is what we're using.
Okay.
Right now, your chatbot will say you will have to talk to a live agent, right? I cannot solve it. Now, the chatbot will say, here's the link to connect you to the live agent. So now it's a different interface for the user. So I was wondering if it's possible to keep the interaction with the chatbot from the end user side. And then the technicians are using their own chatbot, whatever it is.
So I envision it to be this way. Whatever the context of the discussion that the customer is conversing with the actual Microsoft bot framework-driven chatbot, ita-transfer natin lahat yan sa ServiceNow. Okay, so there's no confusion about the interface.
No, what I'm saying is from the end user's perspective. So if they have to transfer to ServiceNow, they will do the login again. So they will have to authenticate to ServiceNow, which is something that I'm trying to avoid.
Okay, let's chat more about it, sir.
So another question. So can I put the chatbot on the login screen? So I have users today who are on their login screen, they can't log into their machines, right? So what do they normally do? They would call. I don't want them to call, I want them to chat. So
Windows 10 login screen.
On the login screen, are we able to put the chatbot in front of the user?
I don't know. Kasi you're not able, supposedly sa Windows 10 kasi nothing's gonna start unless you log in.
No. So most of these users are in the office. They previously logged in, their computer is on the network, they are connected, they have connectivity. So they have internet connectivity, they just need to log back in. But for some reason, right, they forgot their password, they can't get in. So now they would call. But if I can put the chatbot in front of the login screen, then they will just initiate the chatbot.
That's probably, to be honest, that's probably going to be difficult to do kasi if you're dealing with the operating system, if OS to it's very difficult to embed another application on the login screen itself because from the time that you log in, that's the only time when applications can start. Another idea maybe is if you can, have them use an app on their phone or in an alternate device.
Yeah, we have departments who are not allowed to bring a cell phone, so that's the chat.
Sorry, that's the idea I have. Kasi sa Microsoft, yung IT help desk namin may chat. Meron kaming app and then when you interface and so on. Okay, one more question because the time is up. While we're waiting for the question, I'm going to do a parallel demonstration of how cognitive services recognizes images. I'm going to share with you some images from our recent vacation. So what I'm going to try to demonstrate here is that cognitive services is pouring through all of my photos, and you can see right, the indexes, sky, outdoor, ground, person, crowd. It recognized my son, who appeared on 2 photos. We've demonstrated this to a media company, and they loved it. Kasi sabi niya, do you know how much time and how many people that we use to spend and look at all of the images that we have on file just for our end users to be able to search through our gallery of images. Ito na pala. Okay, so it's barely built in. The code is in GitHub. And the code for the JFK files is in GitHub as well. Okay, so I have no more time. I have so many more things that I can share you. But please approach me later on. And I'll show you my last slide so that you can get my email address, hrmedia@microsoft.com. So if you have any more questions, please approach me. I'm the guy wearing the Azure shirt. I was wearing a white shirt a while ago. Kaya nainitan ako, kaya t-shirt na ako. So thank you very much for staying on. I hope this has been very helpful and eye-opening for you. Thank you.